Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Ari Whitten, and today I have with me Dr. Bob Harding, who is an innovative physician who embarked on his journey of personalized precision medicine through years of study of integrative, functional, and age management medicine. He partners with clients to assist them in reaching their human potential. He's a graduate of the University of Arizona Integrative Medicine Fellowship, and has done advanced study of functional medicine through the Institute of Functional Medicine and training in age management through Cenegenics. He has over a decade of experience as an emergency physician and vast leadership experience. He's also, I should say, an expert on peptides and works with the Aperon Institute with Dr. Daniel Stickler, who I've also had on the podcast as well. And I'm very excited about today's show. We're going to be talking all about peptides and specifically and weight loss and healing related peptides as well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Harding. Such a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, great to be here, Ari. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about healing people getting healthier, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, excellent. So I've done a couple other podcasts now on this topic of peptides, where we've kind of given a broad intro of what peptides are and sort of how they work and that sort of thing. So I'm going to assume everybody listening to this podcast already has that sort of base of foundational knowledge of what peptides are. With that said, what we're going to be talking about here is some of the fat loss related peptides, healing peptides, and growth hormone related peptides. So I'm curious, you mentioned something right before we started recording about your own personal weight loss journey. I'm curious if you could talk a bit about what you've experienced there.
Sure. So I'm trained as an emergency physician, and I kind of got into emergency medicine all gung-ho, was working a lot of hours, and then went into a lot of administrative duties. So here I was working 15 to 17 shifts, days, nights, being on call for 24 hours every day for 10 years as a medical doctor. Sometimes if someone got sick, I'd have to drop what I'm doing and go work a shift. And I kind of helped grow my emergency medicine group to a bigger group. And I was just so involved with that, and my health started to deteriorate. So I kind of ballooned up to 220 pounds. I'm 5'10", so I was a pretty fat guy. I had trouble bending over to tie my own shoes, running around with my young kids. And by the time right before I was 40, I started to think, what am I going to do? Should I go for an MBA, or should I maybe do something a little different that could help my own health? So I started the Integrated Medicine Fellowship. It's a 2-year fellowship. It's mostly online through the University of Arizona, and that kind of changed my life. My wife's a physician also, and she did the fellowship, and I was at her graduation, and so Dr. Wild talk. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I started doing that, and actually got rid of my stressful jobs and just went to work as an emergency physician, and that helped me a lot. And
did you say that you got rid of your stressful jobs and went to work as an emergency physician?
Imagine that.
Because I would think an emergency physician is a very stressful job.
There's more stress being an emergency physician administrator over other physicians and working in hospital administration. So
interesting.
Now, it was amazing. Like almost overnight, I lost 10 pounds, probably got to 210, dropped those jobs, and my heartburn went away. I had horrible heartburn for 10 years, taking Dexalant, which is like the strongest proton pump inhibitor out there, and it was amazing. How, sometimes I think it's related when you have an increased abdominal mass and visceral fat that causes a problem with the sphincter there between the esophagus and stomach. And then, a lot of this is psychosomatic too, especially with heartburn related stuff. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got rid of those jobs, lost the 10 pounds, did a lot of intermittent fasting, hit the gym a little bit, and it was magical. 10 pounds, then turned into 20 pounds, hit that 199 mark. You can follow me on Facebook. You'll see Dr. Fat Bob to Dr. Fit Bob. I have all these posts about, on my scale. It's a little accountability when you do things like that. And then I finally went to the doctor. I never had blood testing and wasn't one to follow up, and saw that I actually had hypothyroidism, low testosterone, a lot of inflammation going on, and really dialed things in. And And now here I am, 178 pounds today. I'm trying to lose weight, lose more. I want to get that six pack, but
Nice.
I'm getting there. It's starting.
Nice. Awesome. So how did you then get into sort of the human potential stuff and the Apiron Institute, and what started with your interest, or what prompted your interest in peptides specifically?
So I kind of, there's different aspects of alternative and integrated medicine, functional medicine, and a lot of that pertains to more of the sick kind of population. And I was looking to work with people that were maybe a little bit like me, like, that 40 pounds overweight, not necessarily that sick, just wanted to perform better. And actually I made a post I made a comment on LinkedIn. And Dan Stickler saw that, and he looked me up and saw I was in Austin. He's like, hey, let's meet for lunch. We have a lot of things in common. And at that time, I was working with my wife a bit in her practice, and I had a lot of trouble getting the right clients into the office. And I present everything, how I do things lifestyle, and then I tell them the price of it, and most of the men would be like, nah, I'm not going to pay that. And these guys are still not doing well. I know them personally. So I saw an opportunity where some of the business aspects I wouldn't have to do as much, but also I kind of like the whole program. We really take a systemic approach to things. Like we look at human system, we look at stress, sleep, diet, body composition, brain function, and we also bring in the peptides as an additional thing. So it was good to work with a whole team. The different coaches. We look at genetics, which is something I didn't really learn during all my training. So it's kind of that comprehensive approach. And plus I have a beautiful office here on 4th and Congress in downtown Austin, which I can't.
Nice.
And so you have an ocean view. Yeah. I have an ocean view
office in Austin. Nice. So tell me a little bit about your experience with peptides specifically, and, either for yourself or for the patients or clients that you work with. And I guess we sort of have two categories of peptides that are not necessarily related. So I'll let you decide whether we go into more of the fat loss related stuff first, or some of the healing peptides. But tell me a bit about your experience with working with some of these and some of the effects that you're seeing.
So, I am a biohacker. So you go to my house, you'll see all these different supplements there. And, part of the trajectory is for me was getting the hormones optimized, DHEA, my thyroid. I had some hypothyroidism, and I had low T, not really a good level. So I got those pretty much optimized, and then peptides kind of were the next step to help decrease body fat. So I tried ipamorelin by itself, which I had a little bit of a benefit. Then I did ipamorelin and CJC. So that's another very popular combination for fat loss. And then I went for the big hefty one, what a lot of doctors say will melt the fat away, is tesamorelin. And a lot of times we'll do that for 6 weeks. You can do it once at night to help with the growth hormone spike that you get about 1 o'clock in the morning. So I had a lot of benefits with the tesamorelin. So I did like 8 weeks. A lot of times we'll do 4 to 6 weeks. I actually broke it up a little bit because of some traveling, and sometimes I just don't like doing shots and didn't feel like doing it. But so the benefits, I've always had these kind of love handles, and I kind of melted away a little bit. And then this is called the Phoenix 5 watch. It's a Garmin watch, and I use this in all my clients, or we use ordering. But what I found was getting deep sleep. So what I really like to do for myself and my clients is get 3 hours of combined deep and REM sleep. Sometimes I can do that in 6 hours. I still work as an emergency physician. The other day I got home at 2:30, went to bed at 4. I slept between 4 and 10, and I got 3 hours of deep and REM sleep. I also had a shot of tesamorelin too. So I think, following that deep sleep and REM sleep, that quality, I got definitely quality sleep over that 8-week period of using it. Mm-hmm. Just generally feeling a lot better. I also did my first Spartan race. I'm a guy I've been training for a half 5K for about 10 years. So doing the Spartan race was quite challenging, but utilizing peptides during that and after that definitely helped with the recovery. It's like tesamorelin's got amazing things. Brain function, you just feel sharper. The recovery is great. The fat loss is good. Sometimes you can get a little hunger. It's not supposed to hit the hunger feeling as much, but at times I did feel that I did get a little hungry.
Yeah. So you mentioned several different compounds there. Let's step back for a minute. Tell me about what these compounds are. So, for the listeners out there who have no idea about anything you just mentioned, what the heck these compounds are, who are thinking, is he talking about nutritional supplements? What the heck's he talking about here? And what do these specific compounds do?
So testosterone is called a GHRH. It's a growth hormone releasing hormone, and it kind of works on the hypothalamus and also works on the pituitary gland, kind of tickles the pituitary gland to release more growth hormone. So as we get older, a lot of people believe that we have a good amount of growth hormone even as we age. From the age of 20 to 100, you still have a decent amount of growth hormone. It's just releasing it is a challenge. So it helps increase the release of growth hormone. And we tend to like to do it at night because your growth hormone it peaks like, I believe, 9 times per day, but the greatest peak is at night, about 1 o'clock in the morning if you're going to sleep at the right time. And plus, there's a lot of other benefits. It's a pleiotropic kind of hormone that's has receptors all around the body, in the heart, in the pancreas, in the muscles, in the brain. So that's why we kind of see all these great effects from it, just from the testosterone-like medicines and from the release of the growth hormone from the pituitary gland. That's where you get increased overall feeling of wellness. That's probably from the brain effect.
So talk to me a bit more about what specifically is growth hormone doing in the body, and we've kind of alluded to its role in fat loss specifically, but you mentioned in passing there a number of other effects on different systems. What are the effects, sort of, if you could maybe do a 3-minute or 5-minute summary of what are the key roles of growth hormone in the human body?
Well, it's going to help with, it helps with muscle building. So it has an anabolic effect. So to increase muscle synthesis. It's going to help with bone effect. So it's going to increase the strength of the bone, so incorporating the right minerals into your bone. It's going to have an effect on your blood vessels, and that can help kind of smooth them out a bit, decrease the chances of atherosclerosis, so clot buildup in the vessels. It also can have an effect on making you insulin sensitive. Now, if you're taking too much growth hormone, like exogenous, like where you're injecting yourself every day, like maybe some of the bodybuilders do, that can affect, make you more diabetic. But it can also, like these low doses, physiological doses, which we're talking about, because we're just helping the body kind of increase that pulse, that natural pulse, and doing a natural effect. It's going to help make you more insulin sensitive. It can also help with decreasing your LDL cholesterol and your bad cholesterol too, help with blood pressure. So it's got a bunch of different effects all around the body. It could help decrease neuroinflammation. That's a big thing. Alzheimer's disease, everyone thinks, you get Alzheimer's disease at 80 years old, but really it starts probably when you're 50. You get some decline, you get a lot of neuroinflammation, so it can help decrease inflammation in the brain. It can help decrease like leukotrienes and different inflammatory markers that are produced throughout the body. So, I believe all disease is caused by inflammation. So whatever you can do to decrease inflammation, that goes with your diet, getting the right sleep, exercising enough, but not exercising too much. Be careful of toxins, in your food and your water. So this is another thing that you can use to help decrease inflammation.
Yeah. So growth hormone declines as we age. Growth hormone levels in the body decline as we age. But you're saying, so our brain, our pituitary retains the capacity to produce a lot, but it starts releasing less and less as we get older. Can you give kind of maybe an overview of what that decline typically looks like? What are the typical levels? I don't know, up through the age of, let's say, 20 or 25, and then what kind of happens there, if you can quantify sort of the reduction over time?
So what happens, you have a growth hormone releasing hormone, and the amount you're making or the way it works decreases. So you have something called somatostatin, which increases. And when you have increased somatostatin, that decreases the amount of growth hormone that can be released from the pituitary gland. Let me see. So at the age of, you have like almost a 50% drop in the amount of growth hormone that's released by the time you're 70. It's about 30% by the time you're 50, as opposed to a 20-year-old. So it's there, it's just not being released as much. And that's the way these kind of GHRPs and GHRHs, that's how they kind of help you release more of it.
Gotcha. Now, is there any, from somebody coming from more of a naturalistic perspective, they might be inclined to say, well, maybe the body's better off doing that. Maybe the body's supposed to do that and we should sort of leave it alone and let it be. And if we toy with that system too much, maybe there's negative effects from that. And I know obviously there's a lot of sort of hubbub around the idea that growth hormone is going to impact IGF-1, and a lot of people look at IGF-1 as potentially promoting cancer. Now, so what would you say to kind of that, like somebody who's scared or skeptical of the idea that increasing growth hormone levels in older people is a good idea?
Yeah, I know that's a controversy. That's what we're all trying to figure out. Like all these people that live to 100 years old, they have a lower IGF-1 level. So, right now we don't live in a natural world. Most people don't live in a natural world. We got all this light that's all around us. A lot of us are on electronics right before we sleep. We're not really sure how that's affecting everything. We have a lot of toxins in the environment. We have a lot of stress. Checking your email 26 times a day causes stress that we don't know about, right? We get this dopamine release. I think, I'm a believer in kind of just trying to mimic the hormone system and the body system of a younger person to prevent the aging disease process. So there hasn't, as far as I know, there hasn't been any studies showing that the use of peptides like this to help tickle the natural system to enhance the release of growth hormone causes cancer. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of more of a natural way of doing, as opposed to injecting regular growth hormone every day at high doses. So as far as I can tell, there hasn't been an association. Now, do I think you should use peptides like this, like use tesamorelin every day? No. A lot of times we try to do 6 to 8 weeks, then take a break for 2 months. The same thing with CJC and ipamorelin, if we were to use that too. So I think, doing it for a certain amount of time, then taking a break and doing it again is probably the best thing to do. You can get desensitization of some of the receptors there. Mm-hmm. So, it's just hard to say. I think the benefits are good, right? So we want to have increased muscle mass as we age, decreased chances of injury, decreased chances of cardiovascular disease, better blood pressure, decreased inflammation of the blood vessels. So those are all positive effects, but you will get an increased IGF-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about these different sort of compounds. You've mentioned a few like ipamorelin, CJC, and tesamorelin. I know there's a few others sort of in this broad category of growth hormone secretagogues, GHRH6. Is it GHRH or GHRP6 and 2?
GHRP6 and 2, yeah.
And then there's the oral one, which doesn't have to be injected, called MK677. So can you talk a bit about sort of the pros and cons of these different compounds?
Yeah, so MK677 is ibutamorin. And so that kind of, as a long-term actor to release growth hormone at a consistent level, instead of doing the natural dips, the 6 to 9 times that you have the natural pulsatile release of hormone. So there's concerns about the long acting of that, and I'm not really a big fan of that. I haven't used that personally, or really would use that in my clients, just because of that. It's not as natural, and there's concerns of possibly about increasing prolactin and things like that. Um, Tesamorelin is a GHRH, and again, that is what we think of a heavy hitter to release more of the growth hormone from the pituitary. Also increases the IGF level the most out of all the GHRPs and GHRHs.
Tesamorelin does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some studies show that. But there's also a lot of good studies with tesamorelin. It's FDA approved for lipodystrophy and men with that have HIV. They get lipodystrophy from some of the medicines that they take, and that increases their visceral fat. And we know that visceral fat is dangerous for the body, causing increased inflammation. So a lot of times that's why we use it we know that it works for decreasing fat.
Mm-hmm.
Ipamorelin, you can even use ipamorelin and tesamorelin. Ipamorelin is a GHRP, so it works a little bit differently. And sometimes you can use that together with tesamorelin. So that is it's a third generation GHRP. So you first had sermorelin, which doctors in the age management sphere have used that. Some had good success. A lot of them didn't have good success. There's GHRP2 and GHRP6. So those actually increase the hunger that people experience. So these are ghrelin mimetics. And ghrelin is hunger hormone that our stomach releases, but also helps release growth hormone. So those medicines can be beneficial, but you have to inject it and go to sleep right away, or else you're going to be starving and eat the whole house down.
Yeah. Now, so some of those, I know that a lot of people avoid those, especially the GHRP6, because it increases appetite. But some of this is context dependent, right? Like if you're working with somebody who's underweight or whose goal is to build as much muscle as possible, they might want that increased hunger, and that might actually be a good thing in that context. Whereas if you're working with somebody whose primary goal is fat loss, you want to avoid those compounds that have the side effect of increased hunger. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Yep.
Okay.
And sometimes you get have some increased prolactin release too. That's why a lot of people have moved to the ipamorelin. It's the third generation. You don't get the hunger as much, and it seems to work well. And a lot of times we combine it with CJC 1295, which is a GHRH like tesamorelin, but not as strong.
Okay. So what's the difference, let's say, between the CJC 1295 and the tesamorelin? Is there any, I know that the tesamorelin is sort of, it's FDA approved, it's marketed for that specific thing of lipodystrophy and people with HIV. And CJC 1295 is not, but it functionally, in terms of what they're actually doing to the body, is there a big difference between them?
Not really. I think, it's sometimes people combine it with something called DAC, and then you can take it once a week as opposed to, once or twice a day. But again, that doesn't go along with the natural pulsatile function of the pituitary gland. Mm-hmm. So it's not as strong as tesamorelin, but I think really in that combination of CJC and ipamorelin, that's a good combination for maybe a longer term as opposed to tesamorelin.
Gotcha. Now, what kind of results do you think could be expected with the use of these peptides for improving growth hormone and decreasing fat mass in the body? What sort of typical things that people might see in using these?
So that's all depends. It's all about lifestyle. It's all about food, right? The number one thing to do is really control that diet first, and best thing to do is cook your own food, and then you know what you're eating. So if you got everything dialed in, if you're on, there's a lot of synergistic effects when your testosterone level or your estrogen and progesterone level is also optimized too, and DHEA and thyroid. So if you have all that kind of dialed in, you're eating well, you're sleeping your 8 hours per night, I think you can see within 3 weeks, especially like tesamorelin, you'll see maybe some fat loss along with maybe muscle gain also. And the same thing with the CJC and ipamorelin, maybe a little bit longer with that. It just depends. So we dose things differently. Like the tesamorelin, you might just take at night And when you take that, you don't want to eat any carbohydrates within about 2 hours or so, or fats within 2 hours. You can eat just pure protein if you want. But if you do that, you're going to decrease the pulsatile release of the growth hormone at night, which typically occurs about 1 o'clock if you're following a normal kind of sleep schedule.
Yeah. Now, so what is the optimal sort of dosing regimen for somebody who's looking to use these for fat loss?
Well, a lot of times so testosterone's can be a bit expensive too, but if you want to really lose fat, you might want to do it once in the morning and once at night. It's about 1 milligram, subcutaneous. And then the ipamorelin CJC combination, sometimes we'll just have it done at night, or you do it in the morning at night, and then you can do it in the morning and then in the afternoon after a workout, and then again at night if you really want to like dial it in. It's just it's a lot doing injections. It's a pain in the ass, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so are there any other peptides on this topic of fat loss that are worth mentioning? I know there's a couple other random ones I've seen, like adipotide, but I sounds like maybe there's a concern with side effects with some of these.
Yeah, adipotide, it kind of burns the fat away, so we don't really use that. There were some concerns about that. There's TTA, which let me I wrote this down. I kind of speak at like a second grade level most of the time in the year. So it's tetradeclethioacetic acid, TTA. So this is a PPAR alpha activator. So this helps people get into ketosis, which is great. And some people have problems getting into ketosis because of a genetic variant. And it really can help you mobilize fat and turn that into ketones. And sometimes we'll combine that pill with something called amylinox. So this is a medicine that was used as anti-inflammatory for aphthous ulcers, like herpes simplex 1 and things like that. But it's shown to actually help with reversing inflammation with obesity. So it's a peptide combination. It's a pill that sometimes we prescribe, maybe along with some of the other peptides to help increase fat loss. And that's a pill, which is great. You don't have to do an injection.
Mm-hmm.
There's tesofenacin. Tesofenacin is another medicine that we use. It's a dopamine and serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. It kind of can really decrease appetite. So those are some of the other things we use in fat loss. And even BPC 157, I think, is this kind of great peptide we use for a lot of different things. And sometimes we'll put that in there too to help healing the gut and healing some musculoskeletal issues and decreasing some brain inflammation. And whatever you can do to help with the brain, change the mindset, can help too.
Yeah, I want to talk to you more about that one, but some of the compounds you just mentioned with regards to fat loss. Now, are these, I think probably it's worth mentioning, are these compounds that you've been talking about, are these things that people can buy over the counter? Or are these pharmaceuticals that are prescription only, or are they owned by pharmaceutical companies? Sort of what's how would people go about acquiring these things, and what's the legal sort of aspect of this?
So, we really don't recommend people getting things off the internet with the different peptide companies out there, because they're not evaluated for purity and things like that. So we use a couple of compounding pharmacies in the United States that they kind of test every single batch that they produce to see the quality. So that's one of the recommendations. Now, you live in California, is that right?
Yes.
So in California, I was part of this International Peptide Society. I was at a meeting and stuff, and I believe they have limitations. The physicians there have limitations on what peptides they can prescribe there.
Mm.
So I know they can prescribe like ipamorelin and CJC 1295 and I think BPC 157. But depending on the state, you might not be able to prescribe every single one of these peptides. So these peptides, I just had one of my clients. He emailed me this morning. She wanted to know she could get the BPC at her local pharmacy, and you can't. So there's only a couple of compounding pharmacies right now in the United States making these. A lot of these there's a lot of research done on animals, on the different peptides, and there's some research done on humans, but not as much. Mm-hmm. So these are, and the other medicines, the pills for weight loss I talked about, those are mostly going to be at the compounding pharmacies.
Okay. Are there any safety issues with any of those pills you mentioned?
Well, not that I know of. The tesofenacin, I'm always leery about, SSRIs and like antidepressant medicines, because sometimes people take those for a long time. It's hard to get them off. And I think they lose their effectiveness for a while. So a lot of times with that medicine, we just do it for 30 days. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we're doing these for short amount of time and giving the body a break. People can have a flushing reaction with ipamorelin. So we see that sometimes, and sometimes people will take Alka-Seltzer before they take that. You'll get a little burning reaction in the injection side of tesamorelin, and that's pretty normal. But otherwise, I don't see too much of a danger with the medicines. That's one of the good things about peptides that we're seeing. They don't seem to be that dangerous in the body.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen, last question on the fat loss related stuff, growth hormone related stuff, have you seen with any of these compounds, have you seen any research indicating any clear links with cancer or any other serious side effects?
No, I was just looking up some stuff this morning. There was one of the studies looked at 8,000 people that were giving growth hormone releasing hormone, and none of them developed. There was no more prevalence in cancer in that group as opposed to the control group. Mm-hmm. So as far as I know, we don't really see that. Now, would we use it in someone with cancer? I think you have to be a little bit careful. And that's really a discussion between the risks and benefits with the client.
And the distinction there would be, if there is an already pre-existing cancer, then the use of some of these growth hormone and IGF-1 increasing compounds could theoretically increase the growth, but they wouldn't sort of cause the generation of a new cancer. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah. I think we probably develop cancer, we probably develop cancer cells all the time, and our body's immune system fights that off. So we have a way of getting rid of cancer cells unless something's breaking down the system. We got the Swiss cheese model, different ways of killing off those cancer cells. So, there's a lot of benefits with these peptides too, because you can increase, muscle mass, bone strength, overall sense of well-being. So, I think there's a lot of benefits to it, maybe even in cancer patients, but I think you do have to be careful. We just don't know.
Yeah. And actually, I want to comment on that, because I was thinking about that possibility as well, that if you take somebody who's, let's say, very overweight and diabetic and, has metabolic syndrome, has health, chronically high blood sugar and health problems, metabolic problems as a result of the excess body fat, the use of some of these compounds, if they are effective in decreasing body fat, could actually improve metabolic health parameters in a way that is probably net anti-disease, net anti-cancer, theoretically.
Yeah, because we know obesity definitely increases your chance for cancer. Mm-hmm. And that affects immune function and causes inflammation. So it's all about that inflammation, trying to decrease inflammation.
Yeah.
If we can get people in the right diet and utilize some of these different peptides. And, once you lose 20 pounds and your pants are looser, I think that's a big motivator to keep going.
Yeah.
It's that first 20 pounds for a lot of people that can really make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk now about the other big topic, which is healing peptides. And you mentioned in passing already the BPC 157, but can you give me an overview of sort of the healing promoting peptides, cellular regeneration promoting peptides, and what they're doing and what sort of applications you use them for?
Sure. BPC 157 is this gastric peptide that was found in the mucosa and the gastric acid years ago, and it's there to help heal. So it's a small peptide, and it's one of the peptides that we could take orally, which is great. You can get it in a pill form as opposed to injection. Now, there's a lot of debate on is it as good if you do it by mouth, or is it as good as if you do it by a subcutaneous injection? But it's like everybody's favorite peptide out there, and especially in the functional medicine field where a lot of doctors are dealing with gut issues. It's something that really hasn't infiltrated yet in a lot of the functional medicine doctors, but a lot of the more progressive doctors utilizing peptides. It's one of their favorite ones. So we use it a lot for any kind of musculoskeletal injury, and I prefer the pill because it's just easier for client compliance to take. So any musculoskeletal issue, it's great. Gut issues, it could help with people suffering from ulcers, and you want to get them off a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor like Protonix and things like that, Nexium. You can utilize it for that. It could also be good for things like people with some brain fog too. There's a lot of these different rat studies and mice studies on mice that were addicted to methamphetamines. They give them BPC 157, and their addiction kind of went away. And even on myself, I was a guy that I like wine, so I got into the habit of always wanting to have a drink when I go home from work, and did around the BPC 157, and that drive for the alcohol is kind of not as much. I really limit the alcohol now. And I don't know if it's related to that. I have a lot of things going on, really trying to get healthy. But
that's interesting. Do you have any idea on what could be the sort of anti-addiction effect?
Yeah, that's just an N of one. That's me. But
you mentioned the animal studies as well.
There's animal studies on amphetamine and then alcohol too. So BPC can decrease the withdrawal from alcohol, and then it can decrease the intoxication effects from alcohol too. So there's mouse studies on that too. Mm-hmm. It can help with TBI, traumatic brain injuries. So there's some studies on that with poor little rats and mice. They get their brains bashed in, and they showed some healing properties to that. Subarachnoid hemorrhage too, the extent of how much bleeding goes on in the brain. Transection of nerves on the rats too. They've shown healing properties to that. So I think also anxiety and depression is another one. They've shown some studies with rats and stuff that it can decrease the symptoms of anxiety and depression. It also can promote the sensitization of growth hormone receptors in the body. That's kind of interesting. That's why combining it with tesamorelin, apomorelin, CJC might be a good thing to do too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of this amazing kind of peptide that's out there. It's being utilized for a lot of different things.
It almost sounds like a cure-all when you list off this list of things. And what's interesting is, everybody that I've talked to seems to, other than maybe increasing growth hormone receptors, most people seem to say, well, we don't really know that much about the mechanisms behind how it's working, but we know that it has all these amazing effects. We don't know the exact physiological mechanisms or cellular mechanisms. Do you, other than the growth hormone receptor thing, do you have any insight into that?
Well, it says it has some pro-angiogenic effects. So that means it can help increase the ability of blood vessel regeneration. So you'll see that with different tissue injuries. So that's one effect. And somehow it has this anti-inflammatory effect that, it's not quite known how that works. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of these compounds we're still trying to figure out. And I think it could benefit a lot of people, though.
Yeah. And as a nice added bonus, as you said, it's also one of the few peptides that is orally bioavailable. It doesn't have to be injected.
Right.
Do you have any idea on how the dosing would compare via oral versus injectable?
Well, the oral, it comes in like a 500 microgram tablet, and then people inject between Sometimes people go up to 1,500 micrograms per day and 3 different injections. So it's kind of all over the place.
But if like as a general rule of thumb, is the oral maybe, I don't know, 30%, 50% as bioavailable, so you could adjust the doses sort of accordingly,
Well,
whatever, like double the dose of what you would do from an injectable?
well, I think a lot of people just do the 500 and kind of see how people do with it, and then
Okay.
sometimes they'll increase it. So it's you know, a lot of the doctors in this realm are trying, work closely with their clients and stuff. So there's a lot of communication, and it's not like you see a client once, in May, and they don't see him until September. There's a lot of follow up and kind of see how you're doing. People
Gotcha.
that work in this space, so sometimes they'll have to adjust things.
Gotcha. Are there any other peptides in this category of promoting healing that are worth mentioning?
TB4 is another one. TB 500. It's a thymosin kind of hormone from the thymus gland, and that has a lot of the same benefits as BPC 157. So has this androgenic properties, decrease inflammation, actually helps with hair. So we have a hair protocol that I'm really wanting to use. I'm trying to get some of my clients to use it. I'm trying to probably do it on myself, but TB4 is part of that. It helps increase hair growth on the scalp. And it does a lot with the androgenic effects and cartilage injury and muscle injury. So sometimes people use one or the other. Sometimes people use both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, just curious on the hair regrowth thing, is that something, are you injecting it directly into the scalp or applying it topically or something like that? Or how does that work specifically for hair regrowth?
So the hair regrowth protocol with peptides, there's people using different stuff, but a lot of times it will be an injection subcutaneous of the TB4, and then there's a CHKCU is another peptide that will put into the hair, and that regenerates collagen and helps regenerate hair follicles. And there's also valproic acid that actually helps with hair follicle growth. So there's a couple different peptides involved with that, but the TB4 would be an injection. It's not like you take that and you get hair in your back though. So it's not usually.
So it's not injected into the area, it's injected like into the belly or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So it doesn't cause hair growth in any other place than the head?
That's what they're saying. I haven't done it yet. I haven't done it on anybody, but they're having a lot of good progress with this hair protocol. So they actually do some PRP injections and then put on some topical peptides. TB4 is part of that, and then you'll do some hair rolling with a little roller a couple times per week, and put some more of the peptides in, and they're having a lot of good outcomes with that.
Interesting. Very cool. Any other peptides worth mentioning as far as these regeneration and healing? You mentioned this other one. What was it? CHKCU, and for collagen, is that something that can be applied topically to get, for skin anti-aging purposes?
Yeah. So CHKU it's CHKCU. So it's got copper in it. It's in some high quality cosmetic products. We get it compounded in a cream. You can get it compounded in a cream and use it once or twice a day. And it increases collagen synthesis. And it can also decrease inflammation too. It also comes in as an injection too. So you can inject it subcutaneously for healing, for musculoskeletal injuries too, and just for systemic stuff. So it does a lot for the skin. So a lot of people utilizing peptides in more of a cosmetic, aesthetic kind of practice use it. A lot of my clients like it, especially the ladies.
Mm-hmm. Now, so it is absorbable into the skin topically. It's
yes,
not something that has to be injected.
Correct. Yeah, which is a nice benefit. It's you just put it on at night usually.
Gotcha.
You can do it once or twice a day.
Okay. Very cool. Any other peptides? I want to, I think we're kind of wrapping up. We're at the end of our time here, but are there any other peptides that are worth mentioning that you just are excited about, or that fall into any of these categories that you think is worth mentioning here?
Well, there's one PT 141, which is a sexual enhancement peptide, which is always good. So this is a peptide that works. They think in the brain, not like Viagra, which works on the blood vessels, on the penis. And the great thing about this, one study showed an increased sexual satisfying experiences in women by 50% as opposed to 12% in the placebo group. So, there's not a lot of things out there for women as opposed to men that are targeted. Now, both women and men can take it. We've seen some pretty good experiences with that. And that's
now, is this coming to the market, with like as a pharmaceutical, are pharmaceutical companies looking at, bringing this to market as a drug, since it seems to be, especially for that particular purpose of female sexual satisfaction, it seems to be, from what I've read, the most effective thing out there. Do you know sort of the status of that? Are pharmaceutical companies looking at bringing this to the market?
I'm not totally sure.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure. I thought I heard something about that at one of my courses I took, but I'm not sure.
Okay, gotcha. So lots of fascinating stuff here. Great stuff. Thank you so much for all of this information. Everybody out there who's listening to this, who is now thinking, probably some of these things sound pretty good. How do they go about getting this stuff? How do they go about working with you? So can you kind of give a broad overview of what this process looks like to sort of acquire some of these things safely? And I know you mentioned there are a lot of sites out there, random websites out there. I know that there are pretty big concerns over a lot of these peptides being sourced from China, potentially being contaminated, potentially not being what they say they are, or even if they are what they say they are, maybe heavily underdosed. So how would somebody go about getting access to high quality, pure peptides?
Well, I think you have to work with the physician that's got some training and some knowledge about the peptides. So sometimes that can be a little bit challenging to find. The internet's always a pretty good source. There's the International Peptide Society that has a list of doctors that are in the training program in that, and that's always a good source. I'm here in Austin. We have a great program. We're a pretty comprehensive program where we kind of look at the whole system, and we have clients from all around the country that fly in. It's basically a 2-day evaluation. We're looking at stress, your body composition. We even look at your breathing and your stress response to breathing. We even do a QEEG to look at your brain waves. We do like a DEXA scan to look at body composition. We start with the genetics. We do like a 76-page report on genetics, and these are all things that we can change with lifestyle factors. So they can get in touch with us at puroncenter.com is probably the best way.
How do you spell that?
APEIRON center CENTER.com. Or they could just email me at Dr. Harding at appearoncenter.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Harding. Really such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Hey there, this is Ari again. One more quick thing before you go. Just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Energy Blueprint, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I will see you again next week.